Audio test 1 2 1 2. Audio is good. Let's move on. All right. This is the usual leftist read along. Today is December 16th. We will continue reading. If you haven't joined before, you can check out the description. All this is just me reading all of the articles of 2024 for liberationnews.org. If you feel like supporting liberationnews.org, please hit the link in the description box and donate or read the articles. This is for my personal benefit. I've committed myself to read every single article this year and record myself doing it and give myself a quick analysis after each article. All right, so we are going to move on. We are going to begin. Hopefully, if you don't have the time to read it, or my bad grammar sometimes, then we're good. Please feel free to share or use it so that you can listen to the articles while you work or while you study or while you jog or take a walk, etc. First article for today is titled Robert Robertson. Robert Robertson. Quote, shaken baby syndrome, end quote. Case reveals grave injustices for autistic people. Article by Caleb Granger, December 9th, 2024. Article reads as follows. On November 25th, Deborah Oakes Evans, the judge who previously signed a death warrant for Robert Robertson, stepped down from the case. This is the latest twist in a series of legal wranglings around Robertson's fate. Robertson has maintained his innocence in the death of his 2-year-old daughter for over 22 years. He was convicted of murder based on a highly disputed, quote, shaken baby syndrome, end quote, diagnosis, which even some who testified to his guilt, no doubt. Which even some who testified to his guilt, no doubt. A large part of the investigation was conducted because Robertson was perceived to have reacted, quote, incorrectly, end quote, to his daughter's death, a gross injustice, as Robertson is autistic. The ruling held that a bipartisan legislative subpoena for Robertson's testimony issued the previous month by the House Jurisprudence Committee could not supersede a scheduled execution, paving the way for the state to set another execution date. Supporters haven't lost hope, however. They plan to use the time bought from this legal maneuver to push for a new trial and advocate for the Texas Supreme Court of Criminal Appeals to re-examine the evidence in Robertson's case. If his execution is carried out, Robert Robertson would be the first person in U.S. history executed based on, quote, shaken baby syndrome, end quote. His case for innocence has won supporters from across the world, including medical experts, doctors, former judges, and even award-winning author John Grisham. They maintain that the diagnosis given to Robertson's daughter is no longer supported by scientific evidence, and they hope to challenge Robertson's conviction based on a so-called, quote, junk science, end quote, law passed in Texas in 2013 that allows convictions to be contested based on scientific advances. A crime that never occurred. The incident that led to Robertson's conviction and death sentence occurred in 2002 in Palestine, Texas, after Robertson's chronically ill daughter, Nikki, fell ill with pneumonia. When it became clear that her condition wasn't improving, Robert and his mother brought Nikki to the emergency room. She was prescribed promethazine, a drug that can impair children's ability to breathe and is no longer prescribed to young children. Dr. Keenan Bora, a medical toxicology expert, later determined that the levels of promethazine in her system were dangerously high. Days later, Nikki was again rushed to the hospital after she fell from her bed and her body turned blue. Hospital staff became suspicious of Robertson, believing there was something off about the way he appeared to show no grief as his daughter was losing her life. What they didn't realize at the time was that Robertson was autistic and his reaction was not unusual for someone on the autism spectrum. It wouldn't be until much later, in 2018, that Robertson finally received a proper evaluation and was given an autism diagnosis. By the time he had long been tried and convicted, painted by prosecutors as cold and remorseless based on split-second reactions, and sentenced to death. To activists, it is now clear that no crime ever occurred that night, that Nikki was not killed as a result of a violent shaking episode, and in all likelihood died as a result of sepsis. Medical and legal experts alike have made the case that the courts refused to consider not only scientific advances, but completely failed to take into account the evidence of Nikki's sickly condition and prescribing of medication known to be deadly for children in her condition. There is historical precedent for convictions based on shaken baby syndrome being overturned. Around the country, courts have dropped charges in cases involving the syndrome, and at least 32 people have been exonerated. Of the 8 people sentenced to death, 2 have been exonerated. Robertson is the only one of the 8 who has ever received an execution date. The people's struggle delays the execution, but the fight's not over. Over the summer, after an execution date was set, Robertson's supporters went into high gear, putting pressure on legislators to stop the impending execution. When the date finally arrived, protesters assembled outside the Huntsville Walls unit where the execution was set to take place. Determined to keep the pressure up until the very end, there to witness the execution of Robertson's request were his wife, Manuela, friends David and Linda Snyder, and the former assistant chief of Palestine Police Department who initially investigated the case, Brian Wharton. Wharton's 2003 testimony helped sentence Robertson to death. Since that time, he has re-examined the evidence and completely reversed his position, declaring, quote, I am convinced that Mr. Robertson is innocent, end quote. Protesters arrived in front of the unit around 4 p.m. with the execution scheduled for 6 p.m. At the same time, a legal battle was unfolding. With 2 hours to go, Texas lawmakers argued before a Travis County judge that Robertson's testimony was crucial to the House committee's hearing on the, quote, junk science, end quote, law. The judge issued a temporary restraining order, delaying the execution. Attorney General Ken Paxton's office immediately appealing this ruling to the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, which proceeded to overturn the previous judge's ruling, allowing the execution to go forth. The Legislative Committee had one more option: appeal the CCA's ruling to the Texas Supreme Court. The highest court ultimately decided with the legislators around 10 p.m., 2 hours before the execution order was set to expire. It is believed that this was the first time in Texas history that a high court's ruling blocked an execution approved by another high court. Battles to save the wrongly convicted often appears as legal quibbles, but it should be clear the people's movement for justice, both the mobilization in the streets and the coordinated pressure against legislators, was what forced the legislators and the courts to act. The fight to save Robertson continues. The November 15 Texas Supreme Court ruling that a legislative subpoena could not supersede a scheduled execution means that a judge can set an execution date sometime in the near future. As of now, Robertson still hasn't testified in front of the House committee due to roadblocks thrown in the way by Ken Paxton's office. Quote, we will continue to seek out avenues to get relief for Robert in the form of a new trial, end quote, said Robertson's attorney, Gretchen Sween. Quote, but the only obvious way that can happen at this time is through the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, which has not been inclined to look at the new evidence, end quote. Time is running out, and it's up to the people of Texas and the world to build up enough pressure on the Court of Appeals to examine the new evidence and stop this irreversible injustice from taking place. All right, just another reason why no one in any decent or moral base of morality should ever support the death sentence, because more than likely there's high percentages of people that have been sentenced to death through this whole judicial system in America that probably never deserved it. Uh, Plus, the death sentence is just a bad example of to teach people not to kill. Like the irony, the hypocrisy, right? Um, yeah, let's teach people not to kill by showing them that killing is justified. Hmm. Okay, sure, buddy. So it's a morally bankrupt system. That's what I believe. Especially when you're throwing autistic people into jail for something that they didn't do. Like, imagine going to jail. Imagine losing your daughter, which, yeah, you're autistic, so you don't know how to express the grief, but you're probably definitely grieving in some way internally, and then being thrown into jail and being accused of murder. Like, you don't feel bad enough already that you weren't able to save your child, but then they send you to jail for it. That is so ghoulish. What a wild system, right? Like, no thanks, Texas. What a backward state. I hope the people realize that it's backward state and actually change it for the better. Most states are backwards, actually, but this is especially ghoulish. Um, so I believe the best way to support Robertson, sorry if I butchered his name a few times, is to hit up Texas, hit up Springfield. What is it? Palestine, Texas. Send messages to Palestine, Texas. Let's see, Palestine, Texas. So it's Mitchell Jordan. Yeah, man, hit up Mitchell Jordan. He is the mayor in Palestine, Texas, I believe. Um, Palestine, Texas. Yeah, and staff directory for Mitchell Jordan, City of Palestine, Texas. Uh, yeah, man, hit up Mitchell Jordan. His city council title is mayor. His office number is 903-221-4591. Or you can email him at cityofpalestanetx.com and look up, the mayor. Definitely make your voices heard. This is absurd and this is disgusting. Uh, okay, and hopefully Robertson gets away, because there's so many people that are executed, which I like to call legalized murder, which are just uh, just murdered by the system because uh, they wouldn't accept their appeals for a new case or for a new investigation. Uh, so totally bankrupt system. I hope he gets uh, the justice he truly deserves and is innocent. Okay, I'm not the specialist, but I think that's bad. I think it's bad killing people, especially when you try to justify it by saying that it's execution. Audio check 1 2 1 2. Audio is good. We are going to move on. All right, another article title is Struggle Over Ownership of Nonprofit Summa Health in Akron, Ohio. Article by Matthew Charlebois, December 15th, 2024. Article reads as follows. On November 9th, General Catalyst and Summa Health announced the details of the venture capitalism firm's $485 million purchase of the Akron, Ohio-based nonprofit healthcare system. General Catalyst had announced its intent to acquire Summa, the city's largest care provider and employer, in January. Since the announcement, a working-class movement has organized to oppose the for-profit takeover. Following a trend of capitalist acquisition of public and nonprofit hospital systems, California-based General Catalyst sees in Summa lucrative potential. What distinguishes this sale is the immense scale of Summa, an integrated system with its own health insurance program. For this reason, the venture capital firm boasted in its acquisition announced of, quote, access to new revenue streams, end quote, that the would-be owner planned to, quote, generate fresh revenue, end quote, involves, quote, continuing investment in technology, innovation, and services, end quote. Bourgeois economists have lauded the promise of converting Summa into a technological, sophisticated, for-profit corporation, applauding General Catalyst for its, quote, big bet, end quote. But the most But those most at risk in this gamble are those outside the decision-making process, the working class of Akron. The research on for-profit ownership reveals the harms inflicted on patients, workers, and communities. Patients will suffer higher charges, barriers to access, and continued health disparities along class, race, and gender lines. Workers will suffer intensive working hours, layoffs, and the loss of the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program qualification, available only to nonprofit employees. The community will suffer diminished quality of care and the potential collapse of the health system itself. Ohioans, in particular, have experienced with the damage inflicted by private equity plundering their healthcare systems. The prospect of being acquired by a for-profit had been dismissed by Summa years prior, when Summa executives announced in 2018 their interest in a merger or partnership. The then chair of the board of directors assured the public that they are, quote, not open to a system could have pursued options other than selling out to venture capital, such as public ownership. When pressed by skeptics on how this sale would benefit, Akron Summa CEO Cliff Devaney revealed his own doubts at a July 2024 town hall. Quote, you can believe me or you cannot believe me. You can be skeptical. I'd say I'd be skeptical. I think we all have to be proven that this is going to work, end quote. Organized working class opposition. A campaign of organized community members and workers, the Summa is Not for Sale coalition, has emerged to oppose the for-profit takeover of Akron's main care provider. The coalition, however, does not intend to preserve Summa in its current state as a private nonprofit system. It envisions Summa as a socialized health system that would be collectively owned by the people of Greater Akron, managed by the workers themselves, where the needs of all are met. Realizing this vision starts with resisting the venture capital acquisition. The coalition own, quote, big bet, end quote, is that stopping the acquisition, let alone transforming Summa into a beacon of care, depends on enough people being informed, involved, and engaged in the fight. At its onset, the coalition assessed the challenge it confronted. It suffered a delayed start. The capitalists had been working on this deal for months when the coalition emerged. The state broadly supports the acquisition, which became clear when the state of Ohio passed a bill to allow former nonprofit hospitals to retain their police forces. The coalition does not command anywhere near the resources or wealth of its capitalist opponents. Finally, while many in Akron oppose the prospect of venture capitalists plundering their healthcare, few believe anything can be done to stop it. Those disadvantages understood, the coalition moved to leverage its strengths. Launching the struggle. First, the coalition set out to frame the conflict by disclosing what General Catalyst attempts to obscure. Contrary to the venture capital firm's presentation as Akron's altruistic servant, the coalition reveals the Summa conflict as a clash of oppositional class interests. Akron's working class has a common interest in quality healthcare as a public good, which profit-driven ownership will obstruct, and its obsessive pursuit of revenue streams. Summa is not for sale. Next objective involved. Summa is not for sale's next objective involved publicizing and winning support for its cause. The coalition drafted a petition listing the reasons why Akron should oppose the acquisition. The petition allowed the coalition to publicize its opposition, engage with people on the issue, and amass a contact list of those aligned with its cause. The coalition's cause has been well received by the public, indicating that most disapprove of the acquisition. However, many feel powerless to stop it. By establishing a collective to combat for-profit plundering, Summa is not for sale has taken the crucial first step. The struggle has launched, and people only need to join. Summa is not for sale's next task is to widen its connections with Summa employees. Should General Catalyst gain ownership, what would prevent layoffs and the shuttering of, quote, unprofitable, end quote, departments? Summa's Bapperton campus stopped offering maternity delivery services in 2022, a problem that could only worsen when under the profit motive. But the most pressing threat for employees, should Summa be acquired by a for-profit, is losing qualification for the nonprofit student loan forgiveness program, which would devastate their finances. Summa workers therefore should oppose the acquisition. Supporting and organizing employees. There has, however, been a generally reluctance by Summa staff to be outspoken in opposition and opposing the acquisition. The main reason for this seems to be fear of job reprisal. While this concern has general merit, to the coalition's knowledge, the few employees who have been publicly critical have retained their employment. Indeed, it seems the particular conditions are favorable for workers to be vocal. Summa executives may hesitate to fire those who raise concerns should the bad press imperil the acquisition. In addition, Northeast Ohio has a number of care centers which compete for relatively few qualified nurses, physicians, technicians, and so on. Given that some Summa workers will quit if the acquisition succeeds, the new for-profit Summa could be facing a dire employment shortage, creating a favorable situation for employees to organize. The coalition's role is to support and empower any Summa employee willing to speak out. Through its fight over the healthcare means of production. The Summa is not for sale coalition signals a resurgence of organized working class politics in the rubbery city. General Catalyst's disruption of the Summa status quo sets the scene for a further rupture. If its private nonprofit status can be negated in favor of a private for-profit, then it can be further negated in favor of public ownership. Whether this possibility becomes an actuality can only be determined through class struggle. And the feature photo is the nonprofit Summa Health, which is the largest care provider in Akron, Ohio, faces acquisition by venture capital firm General Catalyst. Liberation photo. So this is, the article clearly explains how this is generally bad, right? The for-profit is going to create a system of competition within the hospital to save money, mainly save money for the investors, which means making the workers work harder, making the workers work for less, raising prices, and that one of the other ones was that the workers wouldn't qualify for loan forgiveness anymore, which is huge. Uh, this does not benefit the uh, the patients because they're going to be treated by stressed out workers. It's quite ghoulish, actually. It's not healthy competition. It's not healthy at all. So I hope people support the Suma is Not for Sale coalition. Uh, this also relates to the healthcare system, like health insurance and stuff. Nobody likes these CEOs. Nobody. Let's see what Suma is Not for Sale coalition has on their website. They don't have a legit website, but they do have an actionnetwork.org page. Or at least I can't find a legit website right away. They have over 500 signatures, only 274 more until our goal of 800. Our healthcare system will undoubtedly get worse if privately owned. It's imperative that Suma Health not be controlled by a private equity firm. Yeah, like making healthcare profitable is one of the most ghoulish, morally bankrupt capitalist ideas there is. Like universal healthcare, period. Uh, I just did a forum this weekend, and we were talking about universal healthcare. Universal healthcare or Medicare for all, whatever you want to call it, would actually save uh, the taxpayers billions of dollars a year. I think it was like $300 billion a year, as opposed to the system we have now that barely covers anybody. So it's not when they say about saving money, right? These politicians are lying. It's not saving them money. It's making everything capitalist, like a capitalist venture, competitive does not save us money. It's costing us more. But there's a lot of people getting very rich in it. All right. Audio check 1 2 1 2. Audio is good. All right. So last article for today. What's the deal? It's a short article. It's a short day. All right. Article titled, What's the Deal with Greg Abbott's Anti-China Executive Orders? By Mason Poirier, December 15th, 2024. I'll take my time reading this one. It's a short one anyways. In November, Texas Governor Greg Abbott signed 3 executive orders against, quote, China, end quote, CCP actors, end quote, and, quote, foreign adversary governments, end quote, which is such anti-China fear-mongering really being Why is such anti-China fear-mongering really being pushed by the state of Texas? What effects are these orders likely to have on the people, politics, and economy of Texas? Protecting Texans from China or kickstarting Cold War racist hysteria? On paper, the 3 orders are supposed to protect Texas from harassment from the Communist Party of China, protect the financial investments of state institutions, and protect state secrets held by Texas universities. In reality, these executive orders are designed to ramp up the new Cold War against China. Abbott is using ludicrous myths about dangerous Chinese infiltrators in Texas to demonize Chinese people and anyone who opposes the U.S. war drive against China, playing into the new era of McCarthyism. The first order directs the Texas Department of Public Safety to work with federal law enforcement to identify, quote, individuals who harass Texans on behalf of this hostile foreign adversary, end quote. Abbott paints a paranoid spy thriller picture of Chinese agents repressing Chinese nationals on Texas soil through intimidation and blackmail. DPS is also ordered to find where foreign governments' influence breaches the borders of Texas. The order finally creates a phone number for Texans to call and report suspicious behavior. The second and third orders relate to Texas institutions' relationships with China. They order these institutions, mainly universities, to divest entirely from any Chinese institution and to seize any future investments. Abbott claims this is needed to, quote, harden, end quote, the states of Texas, protecting it from, quote, foreign adversary governments, end quote. The first order has the most immediate implications for stoking anti-Asian racism. It portrays Chinese people in Texas as potentially dangerous spies to be distrusted, encouraging people to report anything they view as, quote, suspicious, end quote. After making the ridiculous accusations that there are Chinese agents of repression roaming Texas will only lead to hostility and suspicion. The rise in anti-Asian hate crimes in recent years can be tied to this kind of rhetoric. The other two orders are designated to isolate Texas institutions from any Chinese economic ties. GA 48 directs the state to, quote, prohibit higher education faculty and employees from participating in any foreign recruitment program by a foreign adversary nation, end quote. This means that public universities will be unable to hold cultural exchange programs with Chinese education institutions. Chinese and Chinese American academics are facing greater hostility. Many have been accused wrongly of spying in recent years as the U.S. anti-China rhetoric heats up. GA 48 plays into the culture of fear and by cutting off avenues for cooperation could hasten the declining position of American academic institutions. In addition, these powers could be weaponized against domestic dissent. In recent years, both Democrats and Republicans have increasingly blamed domestic discontent caused by poverty, racism, and worsening conditions on foreign influence. This is an easy way to avoid criticism, demonizing the messenger without considering the message. U.S. imperialism, not China, is a threat to peace and stability. The orders repeated The orders repeatedly use the words, quote, hostile foreign adversary, end quote, as if it is China that has been acting aggressively towards the United States. This is a complete reversal of reality. China has not been involved in a war in over 40 years. In stark contrast, the United States, which is engaged in wars, genocides, and occupations on multiple continents right now. China is not a security threat to the average American, nor is China responsible for the economic precarity of U.S. workers. Instead, it is American corporations who have made the decision to maximize profits at everyone's expense. China's willingness to cooperate with the rest of the world on level economic footing only threatens American capitalism because American capitalists engage in a zero-sum, winner-takes-all game. This is why Greg Abbott and the rest of the ruling class are waging this anti-China fear-mongering campaign and trying to force economic decoupling, to manufacture consent for economic aggression and war, and to provide cover for racist McCarthyist witch hunts. That's right. Welcome to the new modern witch hunts. Uh, these freaking ghouls like Abbott would crucify Jesus again if he reappeared. They are total hypocrites and clowns. That is my analysis on this article. I feel like the article is self-explanatory and in detail that people like Abbott are just starting the new Cold War to really just keep his wealth and keep his wealth growing, to make sure that he is doing the bidding of the imperialist corporations and enterprises, right? At the expense of the working class. As usual, this is a ruling class bait and switch to oppress or really to take advantage of the working class. It's exploitation, exactly what it is. All right. So these are all the articles for today. It's been a short week. It's near the end of the year, so the articles would likely be lighter. I expect the articles in January to be heavy, seeing as to how there's going to be a lot of activism for January 20th. Um, I don't know if I'll continue for January, but I will try perhaps. All right. Not much else to say today. This is a great photo of activist, and here's a great photo of a ghoulish clown uh, who should not have a dime to his account. He should be fully liquidated. These kind of people deserve no kind of power. They're terrible leaders. They're misleaders. They're just total ghouls. And Texas would be a better place without him. That is a fact. Without him in leadership. Gulags. Anyways, right. Let me refresh this and see if any new chats. No new articles dropping today, but just a friendly reminder that there's a National Day of Action on January 20th. Protest on Inauguration Day. We fight back. Yeah. On Inauguration Day, January 20th, people will come together in Washington, D.C. and in cities and towns across the country in a nationwide mobilization opposing Trump's ultra-right billionaire agenda. Ready? So I am not going to keep going today. That is all the articles. We're all caught up until today. Everybody have